Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. Prologue. First of all, it was October, a rare month for boys. Not that all months aren't rare. There be bad and good, as the pirates say. Take September, a bad month. School begins. Consider August, a good month. School hasn't begun yet. July, well, July's really fine. There's no chance in the world for school. June, no doubting it. June's best of all, for the school doors spring wide and September's a billion years away. You take October now. School has been on a month, and you're riding easier in the reins, jogging along. You got time to think of the garbage you'll dump on Old Man Pickett's porch, or the hairy ape costume you'll wear to the YMCA the last night of the month. If it's around October 20th, and everything's smoky smelling and the sky orange and ash gray at twilight, it seems Halloween will never come in a fall of broomsticks and a soft flap of bed sheets around corners. One strange, wild, dark year, Halloween came early. One year, Halloween came on October 24th, 3 hours after midnight. At that time, James Nightshade of 97 Oak Street was 13 years, 11 months, and 23 days old. Next door, William Holloway was 13 years, 11 months, and 24 days old. Both touched toward 14. It almost trembled in their hands. And that was the October week when they grew up overnight and were never so young anymore. Part 1. Arrivals. Chapter 1. Ahead of the storm. He came along the street of Greentown, Illinois, in the late cloudy October day, sneaking glances over his shoulder. Somewhere not so far back, vast lightning stomped the earth. Somewhere, a storm like a great beast with terrible teeth could not be denied. So the salesman jangled and clanged his huge leather kit in which oversized puzzles of ironmongery lay unseen, but which his tongue conjured from door to door until he came at last to a lawn which was cut all wrong. No, not the grass. The salesman lifted his gaze. But two boys, far up the gentle slope, lying on the grass. Of a like size and general shape, the boys sat carving twig whistles, talking of olden or future times, content with having left their fingerprints on every movable object in Greentown during summer past, and their footprints on every open path between here and the lake and there and the river since school began. "Howdy, boys," called the man all dressed in storm-colored clothes. "Folks home?" The boys shook their heads. "Got any money yourselves?" The boys shook their heads. "Well," the salesman walked about 3 feet, stopped, and hunched his shoulders. Suddenly he seemed aware of house windows or the cold sky staring at his neck. He turned slowly, sniffing the air. Wind rattled the empty trees. Sunlight, breaking through a small rift in the clouds, minted a few last oak leaves, all gold. But the sun vanished. The coins were spent. The air blew gray. The salesman shook himself from the spell. The salesman edged slowly up the lawn. "Boy," he said, "what's your name?" And the first boy, with hair as blonde-white as milk thistle, shut up one eye, tilted his head, and looked at the salesman with a single eyes open, bright, and clear as a drop of summer rain. "Will," he said, "William Holloway." The storm gentleman turned. "And you?" The second boy did not move, but lay stomach down on the autumn grass, debating as if he might make up a name. His hair was wild, thick, and the glossy color of waxed chestnuts. His eyes, fixed to some distant point within himself, were mint rock crystal green. At last he put a blade of dry grass in his casual mouth. "Jim Nightshade," he said. The storm salesman nodded, as if he had known it all along. "Nightshade? That's quite a name." "And only fitting," said William Holloway. "I was born 1 minute before midnight, October 30th. Jim was born 1 minute after midnight, which makes it October 31st. "Halloween," said Jim. By their voices, the boys had told the tale all their lives, proud of their mothers, living house next to house, running for the hospital together, bringing sons into the world seconds apart, one light, one dark. There was a history of mutual celebration behind them. Each year, Will lit the candles on a single cake at 1 minute to midnight. Jim, at 1 minute after, with the last day of the month begun, blew them out. So much Will said, excitedly. So much Jim agreed to, silently. So much the salesman, running before the storm, but poised here uncertainly, heard looking from face to face. Holloway, Nightshade. No money, you say? The man, grieved by his own consciousness, rummaged in his leathery bag and seized forth an iron contraption. Take this, free! Why, one of those houses will be struck by lightning. Without this rod, bang! Fire and ash, roast pork and cinders. Grab! The salesman released the rod. Jim did not move, but Will caught the iron and gasped. Boy, it's heavy and funny looking. Never seen a lightning rod like this. Look, Jim. And Jim, at last, stretched like a cat and turned his head. His green eyes got big and then very narrow. The metal thing was hammered and shaped half cross. Around the trim of the main rod, little circles and doohickeys had been soldered on later. The entire surface of the rod was finely scratched and etched with strange languages, names that could tie the tongue or break the jaw, numerals aided to incomprehensible sums, pictographs of insect animals, all bristle, chaff, and claw. That's Egyptian. Jim pointed his nose at the bug soldered to the iron. Scarab beetle. So it is, boy. Jim squinted. And those there? Phoenician hen tracks. Right. Why? Asked Jim. Why? Said the man. Why the Egyptian? Arabic? Abyssinian? Choctaw? Well, what tongue does the wind talk? What nationality is a storm? What country do rains come from? What color is lightning? Where does thunder go when it dies? Boys, you got to be ready in every dialect with every shape and form to hex the St. Elmo's fires, the balls of blue light that prowl the earth like sizzling cats. I got the only lightning rods in the world that hear, feel, know, and sass back any storm, no matter what tongue, voice, or sign. No foreign thunder so loud this rod can't soft-talk it. Will was staring beyond the man now. Which, he said. Which house will it strike? Which? Hold on, wait. Salesmen searched deep in their faces. Some folks draw lightning. Suck it like cats suck babies. Baby's breath. Some folks' polarities are negative, some positive. Some glow in the dark, some snuff out. You know, the two of you... What makes you so sure lightning will strike anywhere around here? Said Jim suddenly, his eyes bright. The salesman almost flinched. Why, I got a nose, an eye, an ear. Both of those houses, their timbers. Listen. They listened. Maybe their houses leaned under the cool afternoon wind. Maybe not. Lightning needs channels, like rivers to run in. One of those attics is a dry river bottom, itching to let lightning pour through. Tonight, Jim sat up happily. No ordinary storm, said the salesman. Tom Fury tells you. Fury. Ain't that a fine name for one who sells lightning rods? Did I take the name? No. Did the name fire me to my occupations? Yes. Growing up, I saw cloudy fires jump in the world, making men hop and hide. Thought, I'll chart hurricanes, map storms, then run ahead shaking my iron cudgels, my miraculous defenders, and my fists. I've shielded and made snug, safe 100,000. Count 'em, God-fearing homes. So when I tell you, boys, you're in dire need, listen. Climb that roof, nail this rod high, ground it in the good earth before nightfall. But which house? Which? Asked Will. The salesman reared off, blew his nose in a great handkerchief, then walked slowly across the lawn as if approaching a huge time bomb that ticked silently there. He touched Will's front porch newels, ran his hand over a post, a floorboard, then shut his eyes and leaned against the house to let his bones speak to him. Then, hesitant, he made his cautious way to Jim's house next door. Jim stood up to watch. The salesman put his hand out to touch, to stroke, to quiver his fingertips on the old paint. This, he said at last, is the one. Jim looked proud. Without looking back, the salesman said, Jim Nightshade, this your place? Mine, said Jim. I shoulda known, said the man. Hey, what about me? Said Will. The salesman snuffed again at Will's house. No. Oh, a few sparks will jump onto rain spouts. But the real show's next door here, at the Nightshades. Well, the salesman hurried back across the lawn to seize his huge leather bag. I'm on my way. Storm's coming. Don't wait, Jim boy. Otherwise, bam! You'll be found. Your nickels, dimes, and Indian heads fused by electroplate. Abe Lincoln's melted into Miss Columbia's. Eagles plucked raw on the backs of quarters. All run to Quicksilver in your jeans. More. Any boy hit by lightning, lift his lid and there on the eyeball, pray his Lord's Prayer on a pin. Find the last scene the boy ever saw. A box brownie photo. My God, of that fire climbing down the sky to blow you like a penny whistle. Suck your soul back up along the bright stair. Get, boy, hammer it higher, you're dead before dawn. And jangling his case full of iron rods, the salesman wheeled about and charged down the walk, blinking wildly at the sky, the roof, the trees, at last closing his eyes, moving, sniffing, muttering, "Yes, bad, here it comes. Feel it, way off now, but running fast." And the man in the storm-dark clothes was gone, his cloud-colored hat pulled down over his eyes, and the trees rustled and the sky seemed very cold suddenly, and Jim and Will stood testing the wind to see if they could smell electricity, the lightning rod falling between them. "Jim," said Will, "don't stand there. Your house," he said. "You're going to nail up the rod, or ain't you?" "No," smiled Jim. "Why spoil the fun?" "Fun? You crazy? I'll get the ladder. You get you the hammer. Come nails and wire." But Jim did not move. Will broke and ran. He came back with the ladder. "Jim, think of your mom. You want her burnt?" Will climbed the side of the house, alone, and looked down. Slowly, Jim moved to the ladder below and started up. Thunder sounded far off in the cloud-shadowed hills. The air smelled fresh and raw on top of Jim Nightshade's roof. Even Jim admitted that. Chapter 2. There's nothing in the living world like books on water cures, deaths of 1,000 slices, or pouring white-hot lava off castle walls on drolls and mountebanks. So said Jim Nightshade. That's all he read. It wasn't how to burgle the First National. It was how to build catapults, or shape black bumbershoots into lurking bat costumes for Cabbage Night. Jim breathed it out all fine. And Will, he breathed it in. With the lightning rod nailed to Jim's roof, Will proud, and Jim ashamed of what he considered mutual cowardice, it was late in the day. Supper over, it was time for their weekly jog to the library. Like all boys, they never walked anywhere, but named a goal and lit for it, scissors and elbows. Nobody won. Nobody wanted to win. It was in their friendship they just wanted to run forever. Shadow and shadow. Their hands slapped library door handles together. Their chests broke track tapes together. Their tennis shoes beat parallel pony tracks over lawns, trim bushes, squirrel trees. No one losing, both winning, thus saving their friendship for other times of loss. So it was on this night, that blew warm, then cool, as they let the wind take them downtown at 8 o'clock. They felt the wings on their fingertips, and elbows flying, then, suddenly plunged in new sweeps of air, the clear autumn river flung them headlong where they must go. Up steps, 3, 6, 9, 12, slap! Their palms hit the library door. Jim and Will grinned at each other. It was all so good, these blowing, quiet October nights, and the library waiting inside now with its lit green shaded lamps and papyrus dust. Jim listened. "What's that?" "What, the wind?" "Like music." Jim squinted at the horizon. "Don't hear no music." Jim shook his head. "Gone. Or it wasn't even there. Come on." They opened the door and stepped in. They stopped. The library deeps lay waiting for them. Out in the world, not much happened. But here in the special night, a land bricked with paper and leather, anything might happen. Always did. Listen! And you heard 'em. 10,000 people screaming so high only dogs feathered their ears. 1,000,000 folk ran toting cannons, sharpening guillotines. Chinese, four abreast, marched on forever, invisible. Silent, yes, but Jim and Will had the gift of ears and noses as well as the gift of tongues. This was a factory of spices from far countries. Here, alien deserts slumbered. Up front was the desk where the nice old lady, Miss Wattress, purple-stamped your books. But down off away were Tibet and Antarctica, the Congo. There went Miss Wills, the other librarian, through outer Mongolia, calmly toting fragments of Peping and Yokama, and the Slibs. Way down the third book corridor, an oldish man whispered his broom along in the dark, mounding the fallen spices. Will stared. He was always a surprise, that old man. His work, his name. That's Charles William Holloway, thought Will. Not grandfather, not far-wandering, ancient uncle, as some might think, but my father. So, looking back down the corridor, was Dad shocked to see he owned a son who visited this separate, 20,000 fathoms deep world? Dad always seemed stunned when Will rose up before him, as if they had met a lifetime ago and one had grown old while the other stayed young, and this fact stood between. Far off, the old man smiled. They approached each other, carefully. "Is that you, Will?" Grown an inch since this morning. Charles Holloway shifted his gaze. Jim? Eyes darker, cheeks paler. You burn yourself at both ends, Jim? Heck, said Jim. No such place as heck. But hell's right up here under A for Allegory. Allegory's beyond me, said Jim. How stupid of me, Dad laughed. I mean Dante. Look at this. Pictures by Mr. Dore, showing all the aspects. Hell never looked better. Here's souls sunk to their gills in slime. There someone's upside down, wrong side out. Boy, howdy! Jim eyed the pages 2 different ways and thumbed on. Got any dinosaur pictures? Dad shook his head. That's over in the next aisle. He strolled them around and reached out. There we are. Pterodactyl, Kite of Destruction. What about Drums of Doom, the Saga of the Thunder Lizards? Pep you up, Jim? I'm pepped. Dad winked at Will. Will winked back. He stood now, a boy with corn-colored hair and a man with moon-white hair. A boy with a summer apple, a man with a winter apple face. Dad, thought Will. Why? He looks like me in a smashed mirror. And suddenly Will remembered nights rising at 2 a.m. to go to the bathroom and spying across town to see that one single light in the high library window, and know Dad had lingered on late murmuring and reading alone under those green jungle lamps. It made Will sad and funny to see that light, to know the old man. He stopped to change the word. His father was here in all this shadow. Will, said the old man, who was also a janitor who happened to be his father. What about you? Huh? Will shook himself. You need a white hat or a black hat book? Hats? Said Will. Well, Jim, they preambulated, Dad running his fingers along the book spines. He wears the black 10-gallon hats and reads books to fit. Middle name's Moriarty, right, Jim? Any day now he'll move up from Fu Manchu to Machiavelli, here. Medium-sized dark fedora. Over along to Dr. Faustus, extra-large black Stetson. That leaves the white hat boys to you, Will. Here's Gandhi. Next door, St. Thomas. On the next level, well, Buddha. You don't mind, said Will. I'll settle for the mysterious island. What? Asked Jim, scowling. Is all this talk about white and black hats? Why? Dad handed Jules Verne to Will. It's just, a long time ago, I had to decide myself which color I'd wear. So, said Jim, which did you pick? Dad looked surprised. Then he laughed uneasily. Since you asked, Jim, you make me wonder. Bill, tell Mom I'll be home soon. Get out of here, both of you. Miss Waitress, he called softly to the librarian at the desk. Dinosaurs and Mysterious Islands, coming up. The door slammed. Outside, a weather of stars ran clear in an ocean sky. Heck, Jim sniffed north. Jim sniffed south. Where's the storm? That darn salesman promised. I just got to watch that lightning fizz down my drain pipes. Will let the wind ruffle and refit his clothes, his skin, his hair. Then he said faintly, It'll be here, by morning. Who says? The huckleberries all down my arms. They say. Great! The wind flew Jim away. A similar kite. Will swooped to follow. Chapter 3. Watching the boys vanish, Charles Holloway suppressed a sudden urge to run with them, make the pack. He knew what the wind was doing to them, where it was taking them, to all the secret places that were never so secret again in life. Somewhere in him, a shadow turned mournfully over. You had to run with a night like this, so the sadness could not hurt. Look, he thought, Will runs because running is its own excuse. Jim runs because something's up ahead of him. Yet, strangely, they do run together. What's the answer? He wondered, walking through the library, putting out the lights. Is it all the whirls on our thumbs and fingers? Why are some people all grasshopper fiddlings, scrappings, all antenna shivering, one big ganglion eternally nodding, slip-nodding, square-nodding themselves? They stroke a furnace all their lives, sweat their lips, shine their eyes, and start it all in the crib. Caesar's lean and hungry friends. They eat the dark, who only stand and breathe. That's Jim, all bramble hair and itchweed. And Will? Why, he's the last peach, high on the summer tree. Some boys walk by and you cry, seeing them. They feel good, they look good, they are good. Oh, they're not above peeing off a bridge, or stealing an occasional dime store pencil sharpener. It's not that. It's just, seeing them pass. That's how they'll be all their life. They'll get hit, hurt, cut, bruised, and always wonder why. Why does it happen? How can it happen to them? But Jim, now, he knows it happens. He watches for it happening. He sees it start. He sees it finish. He licks the wound he expected and never asks why. He knows. He always knew. Someone knew before him, a long time ago. Someone who had wolves for pets and lions for night conversants. Hell, Jim doesn't know with his mind, but his body knows. And while Will's putting a bandage on his latest scratch, Jim's ducking, weaving, bouncing away from the knockout blow, which must inevitably come. So there they go, Jim running slower to stay with Will running faster to stay with Jim breaking 2 windows in a haunted house because Will's along, Will breaking 1 window instead of none because Jim's watching. God, how do we get our fingers in each other's clay? That's friendship, each playing the potter to see what shapes we can make of the other. Jim, Will, he thought, strangers. Go on, I'll catch up. Someday. The library door gasped open, slammed. 5 minutes later, he turned into the corner saloon for his nightly one and only drink, in time to hear a man say, I read when alcohol was invented, the Italians thought it was the big thing they'd been looking for centuries. The elixir of life. Did you know that? No. The bartender's back was turned. Sure, the man went on. Distilled wine, 9th, 10th century. Looked like water, but it burnt. I mean, it not only burnt in the mouth and stomach, but you could set it on fire. So they thought they'd mix water and fire. Fire water. The elixir vitae. By God. Maybe they weren't so far wrong thinking it was the cure-all. The thing that worked miracles. Have a drink? I don't need it, said Holloway. But someone inside me does. Who? Boy I once was, thought Holloway, who runs like the leaves down the sidewalk autumn nights. But he couldn't say that. So he drank, eyes shut, listening to hear if that thing inside turned over again, rustling in the deep bonds that were stacked for burning, but never burned. Chapter 4. Will stopped. Will looked at the Friday night town. It seemed when the first stroke of 9 banged from the big courthouse clock, all the lights were on, and business humming in the shops. But by the time the last stroke of 9 shook everyone's fillings in the teeth, the barbers had yanked off the sheets, powdered the customers, charted them forth. The druggist's font had stopped fizzing like a nest of snakes, the insect's neon everywhere had ceased buzzing, and the vast glittering acreage of the dime store with its 10 billion metal, glass, and paper oddments waiting to be fished over, suddenly blacked out. Shapes slithered, doors boomed, keys rattled their bones and locks. People fled with hordes of torn newspaper and mice nibbling their heels. Bang! They were gone! Boy, yelled Will. Folks run like they thought the storm was here. It is, shouted Will. Us! The stomp pound thundered over iron gates, steel trapdoors, past a dozen unlit shops, a dozen half-lit, a dozen dying stark. The city was dead as they rounded the United Cigar Store corner to see a wooden Cherokee glide in darkness by himself. Hey! Mr. Teatley, the proprietor, peered over the Indian's shoulder. Scare you boys? Nah. But Will shivered, feeling cold tidal waves of strange rain moving down the prairie as on a deserted shore. When the lightning nailed the town, he wanted to be laid under 16 blankets and a pillow. Mr. Teatley? Said Will quietly. For now there were 2 wooden Indians upright in ripe tobacco darkness. Mr. Teatley, amidst his jest, had frozen, mouth opening. Listen. Mr. Teatley? He heard something far away on the wind, but couldn't say what it was. The boys backed off. He did not see them. He did not move. He only listened. They left him. They ran. In the 4th empty block from the library, the boys came upon a 3rd wooden Indian, Mr. Cazzetti, in front of his barber shop. His door key in his trembling fingers, did not see them stop. What had stopped them? A teardrop. It moved, shining down Mr. Crazzetti's left cheek. He breathed heavily. Crazzetti, you fool! Something happens. Nothing happened. You cry like a baby. Mr. Crazzetti took a trembling breath, snuffing. Don't you smell it? Jim and Will sniffed. Licorice! Heck no, cotton candy! I haven't smelled that in years, said Mr. Crazzetti. Jim snorted. It's all around. Yes, but who notices? When? Now my nose tells me. Breathe! And I'm crying. Why? Because I remember how a long time ago boys ate that stuff. Why haven't I stopped to think and smell the last 30 years? You're busy, Mr. Crazzetti, said Will. You haven't got time. Time. Mr. Cressetti wiped his eyes. Where does that smell come from? There's no place in town sells cotton candy. Only circuses. Hey, said Will. That's right. Well, Mr. Cressetti is done crying. The barber blew his nose and turned to lock his shop door. As he did this, Will watched the barber pole whirl its red serpentine up out of nothing, leading his gaze around, rising to vanish into more nothing. On countless noons, Will had stood there, trying to unravel that ribbon, watch it come, go, end without ending. Mr. Cressetti put his hand to the light switch under the spinning pole. Don't, said Will, then, murmuring, don't turn it off. Mr. Cressetti looked at the pole, as if freshly aware of its miraculous properties. He nodded, gently, his eyes soft. Where does it come from? Where does it go, eh? Who knows? Not you, not him, not me. Oh, the mysteries, by God. So, we'll leave it on. It's good to know, thought Will. It'll be running until dawn, winding up from nothing, winding away to nothing, while we sleep. Good night, good night. And they left him behind in a wind that very faintly smelled of licorice and cotton candy. Chapter 5. Charles Holloway put his hand to the saloon's double swing doors, hesitant, as if the gray hairs on the back of his hand, like antennae, had felt something beyond slide by in the October night. Perhaps great fires burned somewhere, and their furnace blasts warned him not to step forth. Or another ice age had loomed across the land. Its freezing bulk might already have laid waste 1 billion people in the hour. Perhaps time itself was draining off down an immense glass, with powdered darkness falling after to bury all. Or maybe it was only that man in the dark suit, seen through the saloon window across the street. Great paper rolls under one arm, a brush and bucket in his free hand. The man was whistling a tune, very far away. It was a tune from another season, one that never ceased making Charles Holloway sad when he heard it. The song was incongruous for October, but immensely moving, overwhelming, no matter what day or month it was sung. I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet their words repeat, of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Charles Holloway shivered. Suddenly, there was the old sense of terrified elation, of wanting to laugh and cry together, when he saw the innocents of the earth wandering the snowy streets the day before Christmas among all the tired men and women, whose faces were dirty with guilt, unwashed of sin, and smashed like small windows by life that hit without warning, ran, hid, came back and hid again. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep, God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men. The whistling died. Charles Holloway stepped out. Far up ahead, the man who had whistled the tune was motioning his arms by a telegraph pole, silently working. Now he vanished into the open door of a shop. Charles Holloway, not knowing why, crossed the street to watch the man pasting up one of the posters inside the unrented and empty store. Now the man stepped out at the door with his brush, his paste bucket, his rolled papers, his eyes, a fierce and lustful shine, fixed on Charles Holloway. Smiling, he gestured an open hand. Holloway stared. The palm of that hand was covered with fine black silken hair. It looked like... The hand clenched tight. It waved, and swept around the corner. Charles Holloway, stunned, flushed with summer heat, swayed, then turned to gaze into the empty shop. 2 sawhorses stood parallel to each other, under a single spotlight. Placed over these 2 sawhorses like a funeral of snow and crystal was a block of ice 6 feet long. It shone dimly with its own effulgence, and its color was light green-blue. It was a great cool gem resting there in the dark. On a little white placard at one side near the window, the following calligraphic message could be read by lamplight. Cougar and Dark's Pandemonium Shadow Show, Fettuccine, Marionette Circus, and your Plain Meadow Carnival, arriving immediately. On display, one of our many attractions, the most beautiful woman in the world. Holloway's eyes leaped to the poster on the side of the window. The most beautiful woman in the world! And back to the cold log block of ice. Such a block of ice as he remembered from traveling magician shows when he was a boy. when the local ice company contributed a chunk of winter in which, for 12 hours on end, frost maidens lay embedded, on display while people watched and comedians toppled down the raw white screen, and coming attractions came and went, and at last the pale ladies slid forth all rhymed, chip-free by perspiring sorcerers to be led off smiling into the dark behind the curtains. Most beautiful woman in the world! And yet, this vast chunk of wintry glass held nothing but frozen river water. No, not quite empty. Holloway felt his heart pound one special time. Within this huge winter gem, was there not a special vacuum? Voluptuous hollow, a prolonged emptiness which undulated from tip to toe of the ice? And wasn't this vacuum, this emptiness waiting to be filled with summer flesh, was it not shaped somewhat like a woman? Yes, the ice, and the lovely hollows, the horizontal flow of emptiness within the ice, the lovely nothingness, the exquisite flow of an invisible mermaid daring the ice to capture it. The ice was cold. The emptiness within the ice was warm. He wanted to go away from here. Charles Holloway stood in the strange night for a long time, looking in at the empty shop and the two sawhorses, and the cold, waiting Arctic coffin sat there like a vast star of India in the dark. We're done.